let's get to our next game that we're going to dissect, and that's the Bengals beating the Jaguars 31-27. And for those of you who may not have tuned into the game, you may be wondering, why are they talking about the Bengals and the Jaguars of all games? And it's because there was a significant injury that happened in this game, unfortunately, as Joe Burrow, and I hate to say it, the consistently injured Joe Burrow, got hurt again in this game. This time it's a turf toe injury. And for those of you who may not be locked into sports, turf toe injury doesn't sound that bad. It's like, oh, he hurt his toe. He'll be okay. No, Joe Burrow's going to be out for 3 months. He's going to need surgery. And it's Wednesday now, so he probably already had it. But Joe Burrow is going to be out at least 3 months, which, if you do the quick math in your head, that brings you to the middle of December. The NFL season ends the first week of January. And so it's not looking good for my pick to win the Super Bowl, being the Cincinnati Bengals. And so because I picked the Bengals to win the Super Bowl, I'm going to start things off. And it doesn't look good right now with Joe Burrow out for the next 3 months. The Bengals just have to get into the playoffs to even have a chance to make a run when Joe Burrow comes back. But luckily, the Bengals have Jake Browning, a seasoned backup quarterback from Folsom, California. He led the Bulldogs to multiple section titles, to a state championship. Arguably the greatest prospect to ever come out of the Sacramento area until the guy who's at Folsom right now, Ryder Lyons, 5-star BYU commit. Jake Browning is that dude. He hasn't had a spectacular NFL career, but he's still in the NFL for a reason. He came out of Washington like 6 years ago. He's still in the NFL for a reason. It's because he's a reliable quarterback. Does he have the stuff to be a starter? Obviously not. Otherwise, he would be. But Jake Browning isn't a scrub, and he can keep the Bengals alive this season. And the Bengals defense hasn't been bad so far this season. That was the talk coming into this season. And if my memory serves correctly, the Bengals allowed 16 points to the Browns in week 1. It's the Browns. I get it. Then they allowed 27 points to the Jaguars in week 2. A big reason for that is Jake Browning getting thrown into the fire without any preparation other than as the backup. He threw 3 interceptions in this game. But if you ignore the 3 interceptions, which I know is a lot to ignore, Jake Browning's stat line looked pretty decent. 21 of 32, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase had a big game. 14 receptions, 165 yards, and a touchdown. I know. It's very important, Jaevon. Those 3 interceptions, and I'm disregarding those just for the sake of my argument, and everyone's going to tear apart my argument because I am ignoring those. I'm choosing to selectively ignore those 3 interceptions. I'm just saying, give Jake Browning a chance. I think he can keep the Bengals alive for them to sneak in at that 6-7 spot in the playoffs, get a wild card spot, as Jaevon was talking about earlier. It's kind of wide open in the AFC of who might get that 6-7 spot. Jake Browning, with the weapons around him, in a Jamar Chase and a T. Higgins, arguably, I know the Eagles fans might say differently, but arguably one of the best wide receiver duos in the league, definitely top 5, probably top 3, could be the best. With those 2 guys around him, adding in Chase Brown coming out of the backfield, Jake Browning has the weapons for him to succeed in this offense with preparation, knowing he's going to be the guy for the next 3 months. And everyone, and I'm talking directly to Kevin. I know you're not on the screen right now, but everyone wants to slander Brock Purdy for the weapons that he has around him. Well, Jake Browning can basically cosplay Brock Purdy the best that he can here and just utilize the weapons around him to look like a good quarterback, keep the Bengals alive, get them to the middle of December. Joe Burrow could come back for the last 2 to 3 regular season games. They get into the playoffs. And then if that defense continues to play decent, the Bengals can make a run. And my bold prediction for the Bengals to win the Super Bowl this year could still be possible. But that's my thoughts. Obviously, I'm a little biased because I'm sticking with my pick of the Bengals, but it's off to a rough start with Joe Burrow out for the next 3 months. with a turf toe injury. Jaevon, what were your thoughts on Joe Burrow's injury, but also the Bengals beating the Jaguars 31-27?
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals, they're 2-0 right now. They usually don't start the years off strong. But, I mean, it's all fun and games until you drop 3 straight. Jamar Chase is angry that he's now getting targets. T. Higgins hasn't been targets. Both of those guys announced both of their deals this past summer of them re-signing to the Bengals. But, I mean, Browning, I mean, he has a gunslinger mentality. Obviously, he's from Sacramento, Folsom, California, to be exact. I think it's just how long are they going to wait this out? I mean, we heard the quote from Joe Burrow. The window is every year that I'm on the team. Well, you're going to be out the next 3 months, virtually out the rest of the year. And Shaun pointed out that there will be 2 to 3 games left when Joe Burrow should be opening his practice window to return. Now, what is he returning to? Is he returning to a team that's 7-10 and it's over? Or is he returning to a team that's on the fence, fighting for it? Those last 2 to 3 games are pivotal in what they can be. So I think what has to happen is the Bengals got to see what they got in Jake Brown in these next couple of games. And then if they're cooked, they got to look elsewhere. They got to go and soul search for, well, I mean, it's going to be kind of tough, but Kirk Cousins is out there. I'm not even going to lie, the Bengals are kind of fucked. It's tough on how this works because Kirk Cousins isn't a free agent. And they have to pay some of his contract.
Mac Jones is out there.
It's going to be tough.
Oh, yeah. All right. Mako said no to Mac Jones. Mac Jones should remain a 49er in his opinion.
Yeah. I just think that Browning, what he has to do is he has to figure out, the Browns have to figure out what they want to do as a franchise. Do they want to go out and get somebody? I saw something like people were talking about they should go get Shador. How ready is Shador Sanders? I'm not sure. But I do think when it comes to the Browns season currently, I'm not sold on them still having a chance to become a playoff team. I think they're kind of cooked as far as that goes.
All right, Kevin, what are your thoughts on the Bengals losing Joe Burrow and also beating the Jaguars 31-27?
So there's a lot of people, worried. What is Joe Burrow going to do? What are the Bengals going to do? We all are football heads. We all know the names. The Tom Bradys, the Kurt Warners, the Brett Favres, the Nick Foles. Quarterbacks that got their shot because the starter went down. The good thing for the Bengals is that this guy's been in the building for a while. He is 4-3 as a starter, and in 2022 he played 9 games. In 2024 he played 3 games. So to have that kind of experience as a backup quarterback with this team, with these weapons, goes a long way. I know Shaun mentioned, with Mac Jones coming in there and playing better than Brock Purdy, no turnovers. Is it the system or is it the quarterback? We saw the Bengals struggle a lot. Every season they start off losing games they shouldn't lose. But what I really want to focus on is, yes, Jake Browning. I think Jake Browning is going to be very successful. And the question really comes down to, once Joe Burrow comes back, is if you make that switch. We saw what happened with Troy Aikman when he went down and the quarterback led them to the Super Bowl. Like, if they're winning games, do you make that call? We saw Andrew Luck retire because the offensive line was horrendous. In his first 71 games, he only played 71 games of his career. He retired due to injuries after being sacked 157 times. Joe Burrow in 71 games has been sacked 201 times. He has not had an offensive line ranked higher than 27 his whole career. In 2020, his rookie year, they were ranked 29th. 21, they were ranked 30th. They were ranked 30th again in 22. 23rd, in 2023, they were ranked 27th. 2024, 32nd, and this year, 28th. Is Joe Burrow injury prone? He's always hurt. This is not something that is a one-off. So when are these injuries going to catch up to him? In 2020, towards ACL, towards MCL. 2021 dislocated his pinky. Last year was his calf injury. So he's really put together one full healthy season. And as a Bengals fan, I'd be questioning, is this the guy? Is he going to be able to last decades of a quarterback? But there are always stories, like I said, the Kurt Warners of the world, the Tom Brady's of the world that get their shots because a player of their high caliber goes down and they're able to be successful. Jake Browning has the weapons. The O-line shit, but you got the weapons. We heard Joe Burrow saying sign T. Higgins, sign Jamar Chase. You ain't never heard him say sign a lineman. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But in 3 months, if the Bengals are winning, I think they're going to tell Joe to hold that clipboard.
Ooh, I don't know if I'd go that far. That's all the talk right now between Purdy and Mac Jones is, if Mac Jones plays well, then Brock Purdy with his big contract can ride the bench. Joe Burrow, I love Brock Purdy, but Joe Burrow is on another level than Brock Purdy to even consider that. And the one rebuttal I'll say, we don't need to go back and forth on it because I still want to hear from Kaz, but is Joe, and you alluded to it there, Kevin, but is Joe Burrow injury prone or are the Bengals continuously failing to protect him? Because you mentioned the offensive line. I remember, I think it was the 2021 draft, I believe, when the Bengals had that 5th pick and they obviously needed offensive line help. And the talk was, do you draft Penei Sewell or do you draft Jamar Chase? Obviously, Jamar Chase has turned into arguably a top 5 wide receiver in the game. Some would say he's top 3, even number 1. But a meme that I will never forget regarding Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell was it was a photo of Joe Burrow getting tackled and trying to throw to Jamar Chase 40 yards down the field, or Joe Burrow throwing to anyone else and actually being able to because Penei Sewell was right there in front of him blocking for him. That's my point is the Bengals have failed to protect Joe Burrow. If you put me back there, I'm going to be injury prone behind that Bengals offensive line. Anyone would, at least in my opinion, but we'll leave that there. Kaz, what were your thoughts on the Bengals beating the Jaguars 31-27, but losing Joe Burrow along the way?
It's just a setup for a good story when it's all said and done. I think the Bengals will make the playoffs without me even looking at their schedule. Shaun, you made a good point. Jake Browning is. I think it was you. Yeah, you or Kevin. One of you guys made a good point, and you said that he's been around for a while and he's won some games, and he's won some games, and backup quarterbacks that have a role. They're not there just to come in and start 1 or 2 games. Sometimes they got to come in and start 6, 8 games. It's not a uncommon thing, unfortunately. You look at the Cowboys when it comes to Cooper Rush. Like, we only know his name because Dak Prescott went down a couple times, right? You look at guys like we don't even know who the hell Tanner McKee is if Jalen Hurts doesn't go down, or not just goes down, but just if Jalen Hurts played like in the preseason games and stuff like that. These backups, they have a very pivotal role, and they're still NFL quarterbacks. Some are very, very bad. Some are very serviceable. And like you mentioned also, you talk about guys who are backups that eventually turn out to be starters. This preseason, we were talking about how good Tanner McKee looked, and we're like, us Eagles fans were like, yo, this is good trade equity. Like, there might be a team that needs a guy like this. I can go out there. He has a good arm. He's extremely accurate, and he knows how to play football in the NFL. I think Jake Browning's on that same level. So I don't foresee the Bengals really taking a massive step backwards. Will they take a step backwards? Yes. But all you got to do is just switch up your play calling, make some adjustments, and you do still have guys there, like you said, arguably the best receiving core in the NFL, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. It doesn't take much. You look at Jameis Winston with Mike Evans, putting up 1 million yards. You look up Dado Jones with Malik Neighbors, and mixing in a couple other quarterbacks, but no good quarterback out of New York. But Malik Neighbors still had a really good rookie year. And this can go on and on with quarterbacks where it's like, okay, these receivers are amazing, but their quarterbacks are trash. So clearly they're still able to make something happen. So I just think that this will be a true testament to how good the Bengals play calling is, how good their coaching is. Their defense will be what their defense is. I think that this will be definitely a huge opportunity for Chase Brown to kind of put the team on his back and make some key plays and keep the chains moving. But for the most part, I mean, you got to see the Browns twice. You got to win those games. Just point blank. Let's just start right there. So you can get 2 wins out of the Browns, and it's possible. Can you beat the Ravens one time? I don't know. Probably not. Can you beat the Steelers one time? Yes, I think you can. The Steelers just got dog walked by the Seattle Seahawks, who are supposed to be a team that's not anything to really fear, but a team that, they added in Sam Darnold, and then what else? You know what I mean? Kenneth Walker was supposed to be on the decline. He had a tremendous game, if I'm not mistaken. You got guys over there like Jackson Smith and Jigba. They have a solid, defensive, a couple of key players on their defense that, have big names. But all in all, the Seahawks are not a great team, and they beat a team like the Steelers. So looking at the division alone, I'm like, the Bengals can definitely win games with Jake Browning under center when it comes to their division matchup. Now, I have not checked their schedule, and I'm not going to check their schedule because I want to just stick to my thoughts on what I think can happen. And I just think that if you look at the Bengals, when they have been winning games, even though Joe Burrow, who actually, to answer your question earlier, he is injury prone. That is what it is. He's injury prone. It doesn't matter if there's a lack of protection or not. There's been plenty of quarterbacks that have not had prolific offensive linemen that have not been hurt every year like this. His injuries are significant. He comes into the league, tears the ACL. That's significant. Now, significant not meaning that he can't bounce back from that because obviously he did, but that's an injury towards that's a season gone, done. Okay, the thumb injury, that took him out forever. This injury, 3 months, that is the season. Let's just call it what it is. That is that. We're talking about you got to make the playoffs in order to even see Joe Burrow again. And who's to say that after the 3 months, he comes back right away? What if it takes, an extra week? Nobody said it's going to be 90 days on the money. His expected return time is 3 months. So, Joe Burrow's injury prone. And I know it sucks to say because he's so talented, but he is injury prone. He can't find a way to protect himself. That's an injury prone quarterback. It's not that he's dropping back and there's nothing there and he's just getting blasted. There's ways to protect yourself. If you're injury prone and you need to take a sack by, maybe just sliding down early rather than trying to extend a play, then you do that. It's called being smart, knowing that you're injury prone. And there's been quarterbacks that has done that a lot. I.e. Jalen Hurts early in his career used to piss me off with that. He's running, and he just slides down on his butt. I'm like, dude, make some shit happen. But you know what? Maybe he don't want to get his back broke. So, I can't really be too upset about him taking what I would call unnecessary sacks when he has, pretty solid longevity being in the league. This was his 6th year, I think it is. So, I don't know, man. I think that the Bengals will be fine, but they're gonna need some great coaching. It's that simple. They can do it with the backup. They just need to win. They already got 2 wins, which is huge. That's big. Can you get to 10 or 11, dog? Can you get to 10 or 11? I think it's very, very doable. So I wouldn't hit the panic button yet with the Bengals because even when they did have Joe Burrow, this wasn't a team that was going out there winning 14 games and 13 games. They've never been that team besides the one year they went to the Super Bowl and they were a solid good team. They weren't some powerhouse that could not be stopped. So their identity already, even with Joe Burrow, was never this juggernaut. Stats, like I talked about earlier, we talk about those stats. They are, like I've mentioned in previous episodes, they're a polished turd. The Bengals look nice because of Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow's pretty hair and, T. Higgins. And, that's why they look nice, man. And their uniforms are, they got some cool ass uniforms. But other than that, man, all you got is a bunch of LSU fans that's just sticking to their favorite players that played at LSU. Now they're in the NFL and they're making this bigger than what it needs to be on top of the analysts. That's all it is. The Bengals have not been a good team since Joe Burrow's been in the league. Like I said, he probably shouldn't even have been to the Super Bowl. It's my opinion. So if you go back and look at who they played in the playoffs, how they played in the playoffs, and how those games came down, it ain't like they went in there and just ran shit. It looks like they run shit. You seen what the Eagles did last year. That's running shit. Okay, they weren't doing nothing like that. Okay, there's some times even to give your Niners some credit where they've gone to the playoffs. It's like, okay, this team, they're handling business. I don't look at the Bengals, and I never have looked at the Bengals and said that, not one time. They'll have a few games where Jamar Chase goes off. Congratulations, he's a top 2 receiver in the NFL. That happens. That's going to happen. If he does that every week, leading into a first round bye, leading into an AFC championship appearance, then we can talk. But that's not what got them there in the first place when they did go there, and it's not what they're doing right now. So I think we need to kind of pump the brakes on the Bengals a little bit. Understand that even though they lost Joe Burrow, like they have never been a team that has been greatly feared. They're a team that you want to play against in fantasy football. They're not a team you want to play against when it comes to actual football. So we need to kind of separate that and understand that the Bengals losing Joe Burrow is a big deal, obviously, but it's not the end of the world because they still have guys around that can make plays that don't need a Joe Burrow quarterback to get the ball and score some touchdowns. So I think that they can win about 9 more games, 8 or 9 games with Jake Browning and squeak into the playoffs, 100%.
Awesome. I'm really glad to hear that because that would keep my old prediction alive. Because I was told how dumb I was for picking the Bengals to win the Super Bowl. If they can at least keep my hope alive into the playoffs, I'll be satisfied with that.
Man, you're tripping still. I ain't gonna hold you. You're still tripping though, because they ain't getting past Josh or Lamar. I ain't gonna hold you. One of them two's going this year. One of them two going that motherfucker.
We'll see. We'll see if they end up matching up against the Ravens in the playoffs. I mean, yeah. They would have to end up they would have to face one of them at some point. They'd have to face even if they get through the Ravens, they would still have to face Mahomes or Josh Allen. So that's the biggest question mark. But I'm actually more confident in the Bengals playing the Ravens in the playoffs than I am any other team for 2 reasons. Number one, because they're within their division, so they're already going to play them twice this year. Weird shit happens in division games, even in the playoffs. And then on top of that, we've seen the Ravens' tendency to choke late in games. If Joe Burrow's back at that point, then the Bengals could definitely take the Ravens out of the playoffs. But we'll have to wait and see for that matchup to potentially happen as we keep things moving here on episode 158 of Stats Over Politics. But before we do, I just wanted to highlight Sal's comment on Instagram where he says, in all caps, protect Burrow. And he says, LMAO, he needs an offensive line. And I think we can all agree on that, whether if he is injury prone or not.